I never thought a few words from someone else could hit me so hard, so deep that I'd feel like a completely different person overnight. It started on a normal Saturday, the kind where nothing feels extraordinary, where you think the world is just humming along, quiet and predictable. But that morning, I went to hang out at my friend's house, thinking it would be just like any other day. Laughing, teasing, joking around, the usual. I didn't know that in just a few minutes, everything would feel different. Her mom was in the kitchen when I arrived, washing dishes, humming softly. I'd known her for years, and we always exchanged the usual polite greetings. But this time, she looked at me with a strange intensity, a kind of look I couldn't immediately place. And then she said it. "You've changed so much." It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, like she had been waiting to say them for a long time, like she had been observing me more closely than I had ever realized. My chest tightened. I smiled, the nervous kind that doesn't quite reach your eyes, and I said something safe, something I thought was polite. But then, almost without thinking, my next words slipped out, words I probably shouldn't have said. "Only because of you." Her hands froze on the dish she was holding. She didn't answer. Her eyes went quiet, and for a moment, the kitchen felt smaller, heavier, as if all the air had been sucked out. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the anger I'd been bottling up. Maybe it was the frustration of feeling unseen. Or maybe, deep down, I just wanted her to see me. To really see me. From that moment, nothing felt the same. My friend laughed, nervously, trying to break the tension, but it didn't work. And I realized something terrifying. I had opened a door, and I had no idea what was waiting on the other side. Every look, every word, every little gesture after that day seemed loaded with meaning I hadn't noticed before. I started noticing things about her, small things, at first, and they didn't always make sense. And yet, even as I felt the pull of something I couldn't name, part of me didn't want to look away. I wanted to understand why her words, her presence, could change me so profoundly. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't the same person I had been before stepping into that kitchen. I was someone else now, someone awake. But what I didn't know yet was how far this change would go, how much of myself I would lose, and how much I might discover about her that would leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about the people around me. And then, one night, I saw something I couldn't explain, and it made me wonder if everything that had happened since that day was just a coincidence, or if it had been planned. I had known my friend, Emma, since we were kids. We grew up on the same street, riding bikes, trading secrets, and daring each other to do things we probably shouldn't. Her mom, Claire, was always part of the picture, warm, lively, and impossibly sharp. She had this way of noticing the tiniest details, of remembering things you had long forgotten, and somehow making you feel exposed even when she smiled. As a kid, I thought it was fun, almost like a game. But as I got older, that attention began to feel different. By the time I hit high school, Emma and I weren't just friends. We were almost inseparable. But while Emma stayed cheerful and grounded, I started noticing myself reacting differently to Claire. There was a tension, subtle at first, like static in the air you couldn't see but could feel. She would ask questions, casual ones, but they always seemed to hit at the things I tried to hide. The way she looked at me sometimes made my stomach twist, a mix of pride, judgment, and something else I couldn't name. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was normal for a parent to care too much, to observe too closely. And I told myself it didn't matter. But every time I was around Claire, I felt like I was under a spotlight I couldn't step out of. My reactions changed, my mood shifted, and I started becoming quieter, more guarded. My friends noticed. Emma asked me once if I was acting different, and I brushed it off. But deep down, I knew I was changing, and I knew it was because of her. It wasn't just little things, either. I found myself avoiding certain topics, rehearsing words before I spoke, carefully watching her expressions to see how she would react. I began to analyze every glance, every phrase, every casual remark. And the more I tried to act normal, the more I realized that nothing was normal anymore. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. The sense that someone's attention, their approval or judgment, can shape you so completely. I wasn't sure when it had started. Maybe it was that day she said, "You've changed so much." Or maybe it had been building for years, quiet, almost invisible. All I knew was that by the time I finally said, "Only because of you," I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. From that day on, our dynamic shifted in ways I couldn't fully understand. Small interactions became charged. A smile felt like a challenge. A question felt like an interrogation. I started to notice patterns in her behavior, patterns that made me uneasy but that I couldn't ignore. It was like I was finally seeing the truth about her, but the truth was more complicated and darker than I expected. And then came the moment that changed everything. A discovery that made me question not just her intentions, but my own reality. Something I wasn't ready for, but couldn't unsee once it happened. After that day, I couldn't shake the feeling that Claire was watching me. Not in the casual, friendly way a parent watches a kid, but in a way that made my skin crawl. Every glance from her felt loaded. Every comment seemed to carry hidden meaning. I started questioning myself. Was I imagining it? Or had I really changed that much? And if I had, what did it mean that she seemed to notice everything? Emma noticed too. She kept asking if I was okay or stressed, and I tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't lie convincingly. I felt like I was living in two worlds. One with Emma, full of the easy camaraderie we'd always had, and one with Claire, a tense, unpredictable space where I could never relax. I started second-guessing everything I said, everything I did. Was I too sarcastic? Too quiet? Too bold? Every interaction felt like walking a tightrope, and I had no safety net. Then it started to escalate. Small things at first. A pointed remark about my choices, a laugh that felt more mocking than warm, subtle reminders of how I used to be. I began noticing the way she positioned herself in a room, always slightly angled toward me, always observing. And the more I noticed, the more I felt drawn in, like a moth circling a flame I knew I shouldn't touch. One afternoon, I was at Emma's house alone. Claire was in the living room, flipping through an old photo album. I tried to act normal, but when I looked at her, I saw it. A flicker of something strange in her eyes. Something almost pleased. My stomach dropped. I couldn't tell if it was curiosity, approval, or something darker. My heart pounded, and for a second, I felt paralyzed. I tried to leave the room, to escape that look, but she stopped me with a soft, almost casual question. Do you ever wonder why you are the way you are? I froze. What was she asking? And more importantly, what did she mean by it? My mind raced, and I realized there were things about her I hadn't understood, things that didn't make sense. Questions I didn't want to ask out loud, but couldn't ignore. And in that moment, a cold certainty settled over me. Something was happening, something I couldn't control, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the full truth. Because whatever it was about to change everything. From that moment, everything became a careful dance. I couldn't stop thinking about her words. Do you ever wonder why you are the way you are? And the way she had looked at me when she said them. Something in me wanted to laugh it off, to tell myself I was overreacting, but the truth was, I couldn't. Her attention had always been sharp, precise, and now it felt dangerous. I started noticing little things everywhere. The way she would comment on my choices in subtle ways. Not exactly insults, but enough to make me question my own judgment. The way she lingered in doorways, sometimes watching me without speaking. Every interaction carried a weight I couldn't escape. And the more I tried to ignore it, the more I felt myself changing, sharper, more defensive, more aware of every nuance of her behavior. Emma tried to talk to me, but I found it hard to explain. How could I tell her that her mom's attention made me feel like I was unraveling? That I sometimes felt pulled into a game I didn't understand? I couldn't even tell myself for sure. And yet, the unease gnawed at me constantly, making me restless, tense, and suspicious of every small gesture around me. One evening, I stayed late at Emma's house. Claire had gone upstairs, supposedly to make a phone call. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone, but my eyes kept darting toward the hallway. That's when I noticed it. A drawer in the living room that was always locked, now slightly ajar. My pulse quickened. I hadn't seen it open before. Curiosity and fear collided, and I couldn't resist. I stepped closer, careful to make no sound. The drawer contained papers, photos, notes, things that weren't meant for me. And as I flipped through them, a chill ran down my spine. There were records, lists, observations, details about me, about my behavior, about moments in my life I hadn't even shared. How could she know these things? Who had she told and why? My hands shook as I realized the extent of how closely she'd been watching me all along. A noise upstairs made me freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I stuffed the papers back in the drawer, but it was too late. The tension in the house was electric. Every second stretched out, heavy and suffocating. I could feel her presence before I even saw her, like a shadow moving just beyond my vision. When she appeared at the top of the stairs, smiling softly, I felt my heart stop. There was something in her expression, something I couldn't read, something that made my stomach twist. Was it pride? Amusement? Or something darker, something I wasn't ready to face? I wanted to speak, to ask questions, to demand answers. But the words wouldn't come. All I could do was watch her descend the stairs, calm, deliberate, knowing something I wasn't. And in that moment, I understood. Whatever she had been doing, whatever she had planned, I was about to find out, and I might not be ready for the truth. Because what I was about to see could change everything forever. I thought I had a grasp on what was happening, that Claire's obsession with me was intense, controlling, maybe even manipulative, but I was wrong. The papers, the notes, the subtle comments, they were just the surface. That night, while trying to make sense of everything, I overheard a conversation between Claire and Emma, one I wasn't supposed to hear. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just watching me. She had been guiding me, shaping me, nudging me toward choices, feelings, even friendships, like I was part of some experiment only she understood. And then came the words that made my world tilt. Soon, they'll see exactly what I've made of them, she said, her voice soft, almost proud. I staggered back, heart hammering. What did she mean by that? Who else was involved? And how much of my life, my thoughts, my actions, my very identity, was really my own? For the first time, I realized I wasn't just a bystander. I was part of something bigger, something I couldn't control. And the truth was coming for me faster than I could run. I wanted to turn away, to escape, but I knew deep down, there was no running from what was about to happen. That night, I confronted her. Every suppressed fear, every unanswered question, every moment of tension came rushing to the surface. I stood in the living room, heart pounding, shaking with adrenaline and fear. Claire's calm demeanor made it worse. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, didn't break her poised smile. Why? I demanded, my voice cracking. Why have you been doing this to me? Watching me, controlling me? She tilted her head, studying me like a scientist examining a specimen. Controlling? No, she said softly, almost kindly. Guiding. Shaping. You were lost, drifting. I simply helped you see who you could be. Her words should have comforted me. They didn't. Because deep down, I knew the truth was darker. The papers, the lists, the notes, they weren't just guidance. They were manipulation. And now, looking at her, I realized how far it had gone. You've changed me, I whispered, the weight of it crushing me. And not in the way I wanted. A flicker of emotion crossed her face. Pride, yes, but also something cold, almost triumphant. Exactly. You're exactly as I envisioned. And soon, you'll see the final piece. Before I could react, she reached into the drawer I had discovered earlier and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. My name was written on it in her precise, familiar handwriting. My hands shook as I tore it open, and inside was a photograph. Not just any photo, but one of me. Taken months ago, moments I hadn't even realized she had observed, standing in a place I had never shared with anyone. A place tied to my most private memories, my fears, my regrets. And then I saw it. A second image slipped behind it. A photo of Emma, standing there, smiling, unaware, just like me, except her expression had a strange, knowing quality, as if she had been part of this all along. I dropped the envelope. My mind spun. Claire's game wasn't just about me. It had been about both of us, Emma, too, woven into this web I had only now glimpsed. Before I could ask a word, she leaned close, whispering in a tone that made my blood run cold. Now you'll understand. Nothing happens by accident. And in that instant, I realized the truth I had been dreading. The story wasn't over. It had only just begun. After that night, nothing was ever the same. I couldn't look at Emma, at Claire, or even at myself in quite the same way. The photos, the notes, the careful manipulations, they had shaken something deep inside me. But slowly, I began to piece things together, trying to understand not just what had happened, but why. Claire's actions had been extreme, controlling, frightening, but there was a strange, unsettling logic to them. She wasn't cruel in the sense most people understand. She believed she was shaping us for some higher purpose, guiding us through the chaos of adolescence and fear, through the mistakes she thought we would make. That didn't excuse her behavior. It never could. But it helped me see that there was a reason behind her obsession, a warped sense of care twisted into something almost unrecognizable. Emma and I talked about it long after the confrontation, our voices low, hearts still trembling from the tension. We tried to untangle our feelings, anger, betrayal, fear, but also gratitude for the lessons buried within the chaos. Somehow, we survived it together, and that bond, fragile yet enduring, became our anchor. As for me, I changed. Not in the way Claire intended, not fully molded by her observations or manipulations, but because I had faced the discomfort, the tension, the unease, and emerged more self-aware. I understood my own boundaries better, the subtle ways attention and influence can shape a person, and the strength it takes to reclaim control of your own life. I realized that some people, even the ones who scare or challenge us, reveal parts of ourselves we wouldn't discover otherwise. And yet, the story isn't clean, isn't neatly wrapped in a bow. Claire remains a figure in our lives, her presence a reminder of how influence can linger long after the moment passes. Emma and I are wiser, more cautious, more aware, but we are also stronger, more resilient. Sometimes, late at night, I find myself thinking about those moments, the glances, the subtle manipulations, the quiet power she held. I wonder what would have happened if I had looked away, if I hadn't confronted the truth. And I realize that some truths, no matter how frightening, demand to be faced. They force us to grow, even when the growth is painful. Life goes on, and we carry the echoes of that tension, those lessons, with us. I laugh more freely now, speak my mind more openly, and notice the small, ordinary moments for what they are. But there's always a shadow of awareness, a whisper that reminds me. Some people leave an imprint on your life in ways you never fully understand. And sometimes, the most unsettling changes are the ones that shape you the most. Because in the end, we are not just the people we were born as. We are the people we become, shaped by every glance, every word, and every choice, by the influences we embrace and the ones we survive. And sometimes, surviving is the bravest thing of all,